And even as Jesus said this, Judas, one of the 12 disciples, arrived with a crowd of men armed with swords and clubs. They had been sent by the leading priests and elders of the people. The traitor, Judas, had given them a prearranged signal. "You will know which one to arrest when I greet him with a kiss." So Judas came straight to Jesus. "Greetings, Rabbi," he exclaimed, and gave him the kiss. Jesus said, "My friend, go ahead and do what you have come for." Then the others grabbed Jesus and arrested him. But one of the men with Jesus pulled out his sword and struck the high priest's slave, slashing off his ear. "Put away your sword," Jesus told him. "Those who use the sword will die by the sword. Don't you realize that I could ask my Father for thousands of angels to protect us, and he would send them instantly? But if I did, how would the scriptures be fulfilled that describe what must happen now?" Then Jesus said to the crowd, "Am I some dangerous revolutionary, that you come with swords and clubs to arrest me? Why didn't you arrest me in the temple? I was there teaching every day." But this is all happening to fulfill the words of the prophets as recorded in the scriptures. At that point, all the disciples deserted him and fled.
There I was, empty-handed, crying out from the pit of my despair. There you were, in the shadows, holding out your hand, you met me there. And now where would I be without you? Where would I be? Jesus, you were the voice in the desert, calling me out in the dead of night, fighting my battles for me. You were my rescue story, lifting me up from the ashes, carried my soul from death to life, bringing me from glory to glory. You are my rescue story. You are my rescue story. You are. You never gave up on me, never gave up on me. You are my testimony. You never gave up on me, you never gave up on me. You are my testimony. Whoa, you never gave up on me, you never gave up on me. You are my testimony. You were the voice in the desert, calling me out from the dead of night, fighting my battles for me. You are my rescue story, lifting me up from the ashes, carried my soul from death to life, fighting my battles for me. You are my rescue story. 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 You are.
So today we're going to turn our attention, we've moved out of the garden now, to kind of a pivotal moment in this story. It's the last few hours of Jesus' life. He knew what was coming all along. But today we read about Judas, one of his best friends, who was one of the 12 who had followed and watched for 3 years. Judas understood that Jesus was the Messiah. And yet it's that moment where someone on the inner circle actually turned their back and gave Jesus over to the authorities. If you think about it, there's only really 3 reasons that Judas would have done what he did. Maybe he was motivated by greed. If it was greed, it wasn't a fair bet, because the amount of money that Judas received to turn Jesus over to the authorities wasn't much. Maybe it was hatred. Judas believed that the Messiah was going to come and overturn the Roman Empire. And yet, when Jesus didn't seem to do that, maybe it was more than Judas could handle, because Jesus would not have been the only rabbi that came through his life. There would have been more than one person come and talk about the day that everything was going to be set right. And maybe Judas had bet the farm and just assumed that finally, once and for all, Jesus was that person. Maybe Judas didn't actually think Jesus would die. Maybe he was convinced he was the Messiah that had come from God. Maybe he believed that he was fully God, and that if he were handed over to the authorities, that he wouldn't actually end his life. Regardless of the motivation, here's what I know. Judas wanted to make Jesus into who he needed Jesus to be. And he failed to understand that the direct opposite was the motivation, that Jesus was trying to mold and shape Judas into who he needed him to be. This arrest was inevitable. And what I know for sure is that Jesus saw it coming, and he made the decision to allow himself to be arrested and to allow himself to go through a trial. And the reason he did it was because of love. He could have easily snapped his fingers and made it all go away. He could have done away with the Roman Empire. He could have done away with the religious leaders. He could have stopped the trial. He could have turned everything upside down, and yet he chose not to. And I think the lesson that Jesus might be teaching us is that true world change will not come through power, it'll come through love. See, this is the beginning of the ultimate sign of grace, that God loves us in spite of who we are, that God loves us regardless of our circumstance, that his love is so deep and so strong that it can ultimately change the world. So today, you and I are called to figure out, well, what's our role going to be? What part do we have to play in this story? How can we share grace with somebody else? Because that, friends, is what will heal the world.